Hi, this is Dr. Jenny Byrne. I'm an adult psychiatrist. My practice is Cognitive Psychiatry of Chapel Hill here in North Carolina, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about conflict resolution. So this is a very popular topic. I talk about it with my friends and my family and my patients, and I use it myself every day in my life, so I wanted to share with you some tricks. So before we get started, let's think about what is conflict. Conflict is a very natural thing that happens whenever we live with other people. So if we're in a society with other people, we're in a house with other people, conflict is going to arise. And that's because your wishes, desires, feelings do not always perfectly match the other person's wishes, desires, and feelings. So conflict is a natural thing that you can expect to happen pretty much every day in your life. How do we normally handle conflict? There's three ways that people tend to handle conflict. The first way, which is by far the most common, is by avoiding. We avoid the person, we avoid the topic, we talk about them when they're not there, we indirectly try to talk about it. This is the most common, and it's because people feel very uncomfortable with conflict. It's not a pleasant situation for most people, and they'd rather do anything than to be in a conflict situation. The second thing that people do, which is very maladaptive, is to get aggressive. So when you're in a conflict situation, maybe the emotions are rising and you tend to get aggressive or verbally aggressive or even physically aggressive. And this doesn't work because the other person will immediately start to get defensive and they'll shut down and they're not going to hear anything you have to say. The third way to handle conflict is the one that most people aren't very good at, but it's the most effective way. And I'm going to show you a trick for doing that today. And it would be non-aggressive conflict resolution. And this is a method where you learn how to talk to other people about conflict in a way that's quick, efficient, very easy to learn, and very effective. And this is something that I use every day in my life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with an example from my own life, day to day, and I want you to be thinking about an example from your life and maybe how this might apply to you. So the example from my life is doing the dishes. And at my house, nobody likes to do the dishes, which I think is very common. So what happens is my husband and I both work, and we have kids, and we come home and making dinner, normally we can get that done, and then it comes time to do the dishes, and nobody wants to do the dishes. So sometimes I notice that I end up doing the dishes more than half the time, or maybe I made the dinner and then I still do the dishes. And I start to get angry because I don't feel this is fair and I want some more equality in the situation. So we have a conflict. So what do? The acronym I'm going to teach you today is called STABEN. I'm going to write that down. S-T-A-B-E-N. Just like that. So each of these letters stands for a different step in the process. So what is S? S is source. So in my example with doing the dishes, it's very clear. The source of the conflict is my husband. We're the only two people involved in this conflict. Sometimes it's not so clear who the source is, and you have to really sit down and think about it. If you're at work where there's a lot of people, or you're in a group setting, or a family where there's multiple family members, sometimes you really have to sit and identify who is the source of the conflict. So that's S. T, what is T? T is time and place. And I think of all of the parts of the acronym, in some ways this is the most important. So in my example, when is the best time to have a discussion about the dishes? Is it when we get home from work and we're trying to get everything done and scrambling around? Probably not. Is it right before bed when we're exhausted and we just want to get to sleep? Probably not. Is it while we're out on a trip over the weekend doing something we enjoy? Probably not. So for us, the best time and place might be on a weekend when we're not busy, maybe in the morning after everyone's kind of gotten up and we've kind of done some things, but we're awake and alert and not feeling stressed out. So for us, that might be the right time and place. you can think about an example for yourself, time and place is extremely important. If you don't pick the right time and place, it's not going to work. This is especially important at work, where sometimes you don't have an office and you have a lot of public space. Talking to people about a conflict in a public space can be very problematic. So time and place is the T. What is A? A is amicable approach. And this is kind of a fancy way of saying you start with the positive. So when you're talking with someone and you want them to listen to you, you start by saying something positive about the person. It's very simple. It can be anything as long as it's genuine and it's positive. Now sometimes this is really hard. If you're really angry at someone, like say in my dishes example, say I've had a really bad time and I'm just really mad about this dishes issue, sometimes it's hard to think of something nice to say. But it's so important, and the reason is you want the person's attention. And you don't want their negative attention, you don't want them defensive, you want their positive attention so that they're going to be receptive to what you say. So in my example with the dishes, maybe it's Saturday morning and we have a good time in a place, and I say something like, I really appreciate that you did all the yard work yesterday. That looks great. I'm really glad you did that. Simple. It could be something, I noticed the way, you talked to my mother on the phone was really nice. I appreciate that. Very simple. You don't have to go into very long descriptions. But you don't want it to be too vague either. So you don't want to say, oh, you're a great person, because that kind of comes across as a little bit phony. So think of something very specific that the person did or said, or something very specific about them that's positive. So you start the conversation with the A, amicable approach. Okay, what is B? B is behavior. Now this is the time when you're going to identify very, very specifically the behavior that was a problem. So, in my example of the dishes, I'm not going to say something like, you never help me around the house. I'm going to say, last week I did the dishes 6 nights. Simple, right? Or last week you only did the dishes 1 night. Or last week I cooked dinner 3 nights and each of those nights I did the dishes. You want to be very, very specific. What people tend to do in conflict is lump together all sorts of different conflicts into one big giant conflict and then try to resolve them all at once. And this doesn't tend to work very well. So maybe I'm mad because I had to do the dishes, and maybe I'm also mad because I had to make the bed, and maybe I'm also mad because I had to take the kids to school. But I don't lump those all together. In this particular example, I'm very specific. And putting numbers on things can really help. So instead of just saying, you never do the dishes, which isn't very helpful, I say, you did them 1 time last week, or I did them 5 times last week. Very, very specific. Okay, so you identified the behavior. So to summarize so far, my conflict is with me and my husband that I did the dishes too many times last week. I found a time and a place I thought would be good to talk about on Saturday morning. I started out by saying, I saw that you did the yard work yesterday. I really appreciate that. And then I say, last week I did the dishes 6 nights. Okay. E. This one's hard for some people. This one's called emotion. Now I'm going to say, because of this behavior, I felt whatever. I felt angry. I felt frustrated. I felt underappreciated. Whatever you're feeling is what you say. And it's important that you use the word I. And that you don't make it general, you don't make it about him or her. It's that you're saying, your behavior, this, made me feel this way. And sometimes it's not easy to know what you felt. Sometimes you actually have to think about this. Maybe it's coming across as anger, but maybe that's not really what the underlying feeling was. So before you get in the conversation, you want to think about, what did you actually feel? So again, kind of going through this. Source the problem, my husband doing the dishes. Pick Saturday morning. I say, I noticed you did the yard work. Thank you. Behavior. Last week I did the dishes 5 nights out of the week. That made me feel frustrated. Now what's the last step? This is also hard for some people. N is need. What do I need to end this conflict? So, in my example with the dishes, I need you to do the dishes the nights that I cook dinner. I need to feel like we're equal partners. That's it. What do you really want? Again, a lot of people go into conflict situations and they don't even really know what they want to change or what their needs are. So you want to think about this before the conversation and be very, very specific. I could also say, I need you to do the dishes 50% of the time. Or I need us to come up with a schedule to do the dishes. Or I need to find a better way to do this. So you need to think very carefully about what you need. So just kind of run through this one more time. My example with the dishes, my husband. I pick Saturday to talk about it. I say, I noticed you did the yard work. Thank you very much. Last week I did the dishes 5 times. That made me feel frustrated. I need us to come up with a better system to do the dishes. So how long did that take? Maybe a minute, if that. It doesn't take long, but the planning to do it did take some time. But the actual sentence and saying this all normally takes a minute. So this is the technique. Now, you might say to me, well, what if I go through this and then he says, well, I don't want to do the dishes? Okay. Maybe he doesn't want to do the dishes. But now you've started a dialogue. You've started a negotiation. He's listening to you. He's heard what you had to say. So now the process of negotiation can begin. And maybe the conversation goes something like, well, I hate doing the dishes too because I'm really tired at night and that's the last thing I want to do. Then maybe I say, okay, well, how can we resolve this problem because it's really frustrating me? And then maybe he says, okay, well, how about this? Why don't we just leave the dishes in the sinks soaking overnight and then every morning I will do them, or I will do them, during the weekdays. And I say, okay, let's try that. So we've gone through our conflict and it took us maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes maximum to fix this problem. Now, I know what you're going to ask me, and the next question is, okay, so what if you do that and he doesn't do the dishes? And it doesn't work, and you're feeling just as frustrated. What do? You go back and you do this again. So you go back, what is the conflict? Well, now the conflict is not that you had to do the dishes 5 nights. Now the conflict is we had a discussion about this, and you didn't do what you said you were going to do. So now it's a new conflict, and you go through it again. And normally, if you can kind of go through this a few times, you'll eventually find a system that's going to work for you. In the workplace, if things aren't working, you've already gone through this 2 or 3 times, you often have the option to go to a supervisor or a manager to help you with your problem. At home, it's not so easy. You don't always have someone else to go to. But in the workplace, if you have a conflict and you handle it this way, maybe you try this 2 or 3 times, it's still not working, and then you go to the manager and you tell them the problem. Think how happy they're going to be that you've already tried to do this 3 times instead of just coming to them with every single conflict. So this is the acronym STAVEN. Try it. Think of some examples from your life where this could work and see if it works for you. It's something that I use and I talk to people about all the time. So I wish you the best of luck with it. And if you have any more questions, my information is below. Please just give me a call. Thanks.